Welcome to Pastor's Chat today. Well, we're in Revelations chapter 8. As we saw in chapter 6, there was a seven-sealed book in the hand of God that only the Lamb of God, Jesus Christ, was worthy to open. He began to open those seals. We believe those seals, as they were opened, reveal the work of the Antichrist and his take over the world with a one-world government, a one-world church, and, of course, a one-world economy. We see that in the first 3.5 years of the tribulation. Also, two witnesses we're going to see in chapter 11 are going to be sent to the earth by God. Nobody can hurt them. They're going to preach at the very beginning of the tribulation period. And then 144,000 Jews we see in chapter 7 are sealed, and they have 12,000 from each of the named tribes, and they preach the gospel. And then there's a multitude. As the sixth seal is open, there's a multitude. The fifth seal is open, there's a multitude of people who get saved in the tribulation, but their blood is spilt. They make their clothes white in the blood of the Lamb. A lot of blood is shed by the Antichrist as he takes on and kills those who will not fall to his authority and bow to him and take his mark, as we'll see later in the book of Revelations described in more detail. And then that brings us to the seventh seal, and when it's opened, there's silence in heaven here in chapter 8, but then the seventh seal releases the seven trumpets, and the seven trumpets begin to sound. Now the first trumpet, remember, when it sounded, there was desolation on the earth. Hell and fire mingled with blood come to the earth, and a third of the trees were burned up, and all the green grass was burned up. Can you imagine what's going to take place as this begins to happen? I believe in the first part of the last 3.5 years of the tribulation period. Then now we're down to verse 9. And then, or verse 10, or I've got it again, verse 8. And then the second angel sounded, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea, and a third of the sea became blood, and a third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. So in verses 8 and 9, I finally get it right here. The second angel sounded, and this affected the sea. Now we believe this was more than the Sea of Galilee. This was more than the Mediterranean Sea, local seas, but this was the seas of the earth. And it basically says that when this takes place, it is not actually a mountain, but it's something like a great mountain is cast into the sea, and then this devastation takes place. Remember one of the first things that Moses did in Egypt? He held his hand out over the Nile River, and it became blood. Well, this says that a third of the sea becomes blood. You say, you believe it has literal blood? Well, I believe it was literal blood because things began to happen. Things died in the sea. I don't think it just turned red like blood, because usually it's like a great mountain. It was not a mountain cast in the sea, but John couldn't describe exactly what it was. He just says it's like a great mountain. It wasn't a mountain, but something got cast in the sea, and we can only speculate maybe what that something was. But it became blood. I believe literal blood. And a third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed, and a third of the sea became blood. Now, can you imagine that a third of the ships of the sea are destroyed? That means there's probably, they tell us in 2021, there were 50,000 merchant ships on the sea. And so a third of them would be 16,666. Well, when that takes place, and you talk about a slowdown in the supply chain, brother, we're going to have it. No fuel, no food being passed from some of the food producing countries, and the world economy is going to crash, and that'll take place, I believe, in the last 3.5 years of the tribulation, when Antichrist is, oh man, he's set up his kingdom. It's as if God says, you want blood? The blood of the saints was spilled. You want blood? I'll give you blood, and a third of the sea becomes blood. Terrible desolations take place. So the earth is affected with, of course, the green grass being burned up in the trees, etc. And then now the seas being affected. God is in control. Let's trust Him. Well, today we're going to close right there, and we'll pick up on the third angel tomorrow. And God bless you, and you have a wonderful, wonderful day.